it went from being that to a full blown out
This is
argument.
one of the hardest topics. When a woman finally speaks out about the abuse she went through in her marriage, it is difficult. So we all know Nota, right? We know the kind of a man he is. We know the kind of friends he has. Simple men who are just like him, who are all about ridiculating women, emotionally abusing women. Most of us have judged Berita for being with this kind of a man. So Berita finally speaks out. She finally gives her narrative. She is divorced to Nota. But before we can listen to what Berita had to say, let me just remind you who Berita is. She is one of the most incredible singers we have in the country, soul and jazz artist. And if you know what love is, then you definitely know who Berita is. Please just take a listen. So Berita had to sit in with Dineo Ranaka and Soul to give her narrative, to give her side of the story, because we've never had her talking. The only side we had is from Nota, still saying that Berita is still his wife. So this is what she had to say.
There are things I remember. A week into dating this man, I remember we were driving in a car, and at the time he was working with a female artist, and the female artist had an assistant, and the assistant was supposed to post something on social media, like routine work. And I think he had bought a dongle for this assistant.
Yes, of course, Wi-Fi access on travels and so forth, yeah.
And the assistant forgot to post or forgot the dongle. The way he screamed and shouted at that assistant until the assistant was weeping, I think for me that I always look back on that day, because it took a long time ba aqale unshouta mna or ukunthuka nokuthetha kakubi ngam. For the longest time he was doing it to people around me, and I didn't realize that when someone does things to people around you, it's closing in. It's actually coming to you.
They're isolating you.
Eventually,
they're isolated. They're putting you in a situation whereby you're going to depend on him. I mean, the things he's gone and said, and he's really tried to make it seem as if he made me, which he never did, and he never will. And I think he's actually, looking at the system, yes, in South Africa, he's not even supposed to be walking the streets. He's abusive to authority. He's abusive
real
online.
authority.
He's urged so much that if it were a different country, he would be locked up.
And just like any abusive relationship, it was not easy for Berita to leave Nota. She had to come up with tricks. She has to find a way to leave this man, because you'll never know what might come next. So this is what she had to say about leaving him.
So, abused publicly, because that's what it really is. I mean, I have vivid memories of the day I left my marriage. I remember that was the first time that I found out, because I called a therapist on that day when I was leaving. That's when I found out that I was in a narcissistically abusive relationship. Because I spent a long time, I spent like an hour and a half telling exactly what was going on in the relationship. And the entire time I'm thinking, oh, this is rage. This is someone that's angry. Oh, this is someone, that's going through stuff. And the day that I learned that I was in an abusive relationship, I did not stay 1 minute. I quickly made plans on that day. And I literally remember, I want to tell it because you asked me about being displaced. I literally remember the day I left, I'd gone and bought continental pillows from like Mr. Price, right, for the house. And I remember coming into the house, picking up my stuff and putting it inside that plastic bag of the continent, that big
there's a
plastic
store.
The red one,
And I put my bag and I literally said, Diabuya, I think because in Ditenge continental periods ne rug, I'm taking this rug back. And I knew that I was yes. And at that moment I booked myself into a hotel room and I left as if
you're coming back.
And you're ambitious continental pillars, and I took my stuff to the hotel. I still came back and I said, hey, by the way, I'm going to go to the studio later. And I was like, okay. And I never went back. That's how I left.
What did it